Hi everyone, I'm going to show you how I made a homemade soup stock using the cast iron, and then later making a homemade ramen noodles also using the stock and the cast iron. So first I'm going to use some beef tallow, and I'm going to gently cook the onion and the tomato in my Wagner number 9 deep skillet. I would use a Dutch oven, but mine broke. Somehow it fell off the shelf and it shattered. So cast iron is brittle, and it can break. It's not indestructible, so you got to be gentle with it. Um, I make sure not to put the heat too high because I don't want those veggies to caramelize. I just want them to cook gently and to soften, which is going to concentrate the flavors. Then if you were to just use raw veggies for the stock. So after about 10 or 15 minutes of cooking the onions and the tomatoes, then I added the carrots and the celery. I'm going to mix those around, and then I'm going to put the lid on and just let it cook gently for about 10 or 15 minutes. After those 10 or 15 minutes, then I'm going to add the ham bone, and then I'm going to completely fill it all the way up to the top with water. And then I'm going to bring it up to a boil. Once it's at that boiling point, then I'm going to reduce the heat so that way it just gently simmers for about 3 hours. I don't want it boiling the whole time, I just want it to gently simmer. So you might have to check on it every now and again just to make sure it's not getting too hot or that your heat's not too low. Now you are going to get a little bit of this scum here on the top. That's normal. Every now and again, you're going to want to remove the lid and just kind of scoop off that scum as you see it. And if needed, you can add some water as that stock is simmering for hours. That water level can go down, so you can just add some more water as necessary. Now, using that front burner, it was getting a little too hot, so I moved it to the smaller burner in the back, kept it on the very lowest setting, and that was perfect for what I needed it for. I was trying to remove that scum using a wooden spoon, but then I realized it was going to take me way too long. So what I did then instead was just use a ladle and then a bowl and a colander to just kind of scoop that off the top, put it in the colander, and then I just took the veggies that were in that colander. I just rinsed them off real good underneath the sink faucet, and then I put it back inside the cast iron. As you can see, after removing that scum, the broth is a lot more clear, which is what you're looking for. It is going to take about 3 hours for that to simmer fully so you can get all that marrow out of that ham bone. I didn't add any other seasonings while I was making the stock other than white miso. The white miso is going to add a more savory and umami component. And the ham bone that I used, it was a spiral cut honey baked ham. So it is going to have a little bit of sweetness, and also the carrots do give a little bit of sweetness as well. But also that ham, it is a little smoky and also a little sweet from that honey glaze. Now to counterbalance the sweetness, one thing that you could do is add a little bit of acid, like a vinegar, or you can even use some kimchi. That kind of balances or counterbalances that sweetness. I don't mind it. It wasn't overly sweet. It had a lot of savory flavor to it. So I was really happy with the way that it turned out. Once your 3 hours are done, you want to completely remove all those veggies, the meat, and the bone from the stock there. So you're just left with a nice golden brown colored stock. The meat, you can still use it, but I elected not to because most of the flavor from that meat is in that stock at this point. So when I make my ramen, I'm just going to want to use a different slice of ham. Look at all that scuzz that you're left with. Yeah, you don't want that in your soup. It doesn't add any extra value to your soup. So you just want to get that out of there. You're left with a nice golden brown stock there. Then what I did was, using the cast iron Scotch bowl, I heated it, and then I added some very finely sliced onions, and I add a little bit more of that beef tallow. I'm going to use about a medium heat for this and cook it for about 5 minutes, just until those onions become somewhat translucent. And then I added some thinly sliced mushrooms and some tomato. And then I'm just going to cook that for about another 5 to 10 minutes or so. And then I'll add the stock to that. After adding the stock, then what I'm going to do is let that come up to a boil, and then reduce the heat and just let it simmer for about 10 or 15 minutes or so. Once it's simmering, then I'm going to add some seasoning to that stock. For this ramen, what I added for seasoning was some black pepper, a little bit of soy sauce, and then I had this, it's like a sauce marinade. It just makes it a little bit more savory. And I was really happy with the way that the flavor did turn out. It had a little bit of sweetness, but it also had a good amount of savoriness to it. So I'm going to let those veggies simmer inside that stock for about 15 minutes or so. After those 15 minutes, I also added some baby bok choy. I didn't put them at the beginning because I didn't want the bok choy to just become really soggy and too soft. I still wanted it to retain a little bit of that crunch. And then once the bok choy is done, then I'm going to reduce the heat, and I'm going to crack an egg directly into there. Now the egg, I want it to be soft boiled, so I want the whites to be cooked through, but I do want the yolk to still be runny. Some people like cooking it all the way through. That's fine, whatever your preference, but me personally, I do prefer doing that soft boiled egg. Currently, I am on a keto diet, so I didn't use regular ramen noodles. Instead, from the Asian market, I picked up some tofu noodles, which were very comparable to ramen, and they have very few carbs. They only have about 3 or 4 grams of carbs for the amount that I added to this ramen soup. After adding the egg, I'm just going to completely turn off the heat, and then I'm just going to use a ladle and stir it around so that way that egg white cooks. Now these tofu noodles, they're already cooked. You don't need to boil them in water first or anything like that. So I just added it right to them. And then I added some nice ham slices. And then it's ready to eat.